Sam Altman, From Y Combinator to OpenAI, The Complete Story. Sam Altman was born on April 22, 1985 in Chicago, Illinois. He grew up in St. Louis, Missouri during a time when personal computers were just beginning to enter American homes. His childhood coincided with the early days of the Internet revolution. The World Wide Web had just been invented. Email was becoming mainstream. Tech companies were starting to see massive growth. Young Sam was 8 years old when Amazon launched in 1995. He was 13 when the dot-com bubble reached its peak in 2000. These formative years shaped his understanding of technology's potential to transform society. Sam's parents were middle-class professionals who valued education and encouraged intellectual curiosity. His father was a dermatologist and his mother was a dermatologist as well. They provided a stable, supportive environment that allowed Sam to explore his interests freely. The family was comfortably middle class, not wealthy but with enough resources for Sam to have access to computers and technology from an early age. This access proved crucial in developing his early fascination with programming and software. From a young age, Sam showed signs of exceptional intelligence and ambition. He was precocious, reading advanced books and asking difficult questions. He had an intense curiosity about how things worked, particularly machines and computers. Unlike many children who used computers only for games, Sam wanted to understand the underlying code. He taught himself to program at age 8, writing simple programs and experimenting with what computers could do. This wasn't just a hobby. It was an obsession that consumed his free time and shaped his worldview. Sam attended John Burroughs School, a prestigious private school in St. Louis. The school had a reputation for academic excellence and attracted motivated, high-achieving students. Here Sam excelled in mathematics and science. He was known among his peers as exceptionally bright but also unconventional in his thinking. Teachers remember him as someone who questioned assumptions and wasn't satisfied with surface-level explanations. He wanted to understand the fundamental principles underlying everything. This intellectual restlessness would become a defining characteristic throughout his life. During high school, Sam came out as gay at age 16. This was 2001, a time when acceptance of LGBT individuals was far less widespread than today. Coming out required courage and conviction. It also taught him something important about living authentically and not conforming to expectations. He learned that sometimes the right path meant going against societal pressure. This experience shaped his philosophy about taking contrarian positions when you believe you're right. It reinforced his natural tendency toward independent thinking. Sam's teenage years coincided with the aftermath of the dot-com crash. The Nasdaq had fallen from over 5,000 in March 2000 to under 1,200 by October 2002. Hundreds of internet companies went bankrupt. Billions of dollars in market value evaporated. Many observers declared the internet revolution over, a speculative bubble that had popped. But young Sam saw something different. He saw that underneath the financial chaos, the fundamental technology kept improving. Internet adoption kept growing. The infrastructure kept getting better. The crash had wiped out bad business models, but the underlying potential remained unchanged. This insight about distinguishing between hype cycles and genuine technological progress would guide Sam's thinking throughout his career. He learned to look past short-term market sentiment and focus on long-term technological trajectories. He understood that truly transformative technologies often go through periods of disillusionment before reaching their full potential. This framework helped him identify opportunities that others missed because they were too focused on current sentiment rather than future possibilities. In 2003, Sam enrolled at Stanford University to study computer science. Stanford was the epicenter of Silicon Valley's tech culture. The campus was surrounded by venture capital firms on Sand Hill Road. Many professors had founded successful companies. Students were encouraged to think entrepreneurially. The culture emphasized building things and taking risks. For someone like Sam, who already had entrepreneurial ambitions, Stanford was the perfect environment. It wasn't just about the formal education. It was about the ecosystem, the network, and the ambient culture of innovation. At Stanford, Sam quickly became immersed in the startup scene. He attended entrepreneur meetups and startup pitch competitions. He read about successful founders and studied their journeys. He was particularly drawn to stories of young founders who had started companies while still in school. Bill Gates had dropped out of Harvard to found Microsoft. Steve Jobs had dropped out of Reed College before starting Apple. Mark Zuckerberg was currently building Facebook from his Harvard dorm room. These examples showed that you didn't need decades of experience or formal credentials to build something important. Sam's ambition was already forming into a concrete vision. He didn't want to climb a corporate ladder or become a high-paid engineer at an established company. He wanted to build something from scratch that would change the world. This wasn't naive optimism. It was a carefully considered career strategy based on studying how previous generations of founders had achieved outsized impact. He understood that the highest leverage came from being a founder, not an employee. Starting a company meant you controlled your own destiny and captured most of the value you created. In his freshman year, Sam met his future co-founder Nick Sevo. They bonded over shared interests in technology and entrepreneurship. Together they began exploring startup ideas, looking for problems they could solve with software. They experimented with several concepts before landing on one that seemed promising. The idea was to build a mobile application that helped people find location-based information. This was 2004, and smartphones weren't yet ubiquitous. But Sam believed mobile technology would become hugely important as devices improved and wireless networks expanded. In 2005, after just 2 years at Stanford, Sam made the bold decision to drop out and focus full-time on his startup. He was 19 years old. Dropping out of an elite university to start a company was risky, but Sam had conviction in his idea and confidence in his abilities. He'd seen that successful founders often left school to pursue their ventures. Facebook, Google, Yahoo, and many other successful tech companies had been started by college dropouts or recent graduates. The pattern was clear. The best time to start a company wasn't after decades of corporate experience. It was when you were young, energetic, and unencumbered by responsibilities. Sam and Nick founded Loopt, a location-based social networking mobile application. The concept was ahead of its time. Loopt would let users share their location with friends and discover people and businesses nearby. Today this functionality is built into every social app and mapping service. But in 2005, it was novel and technically challenging. Smartphones were primitive by today's standards. GPS was less accurate. Wireless data was slower and more expensive. Building a location-based service meant solving difficult technical problems with limited tools. Despite these challenges, Sam was optimistic about Loopt's potential. He believed that as mobile technology improved, location-aware applications would become essential to how people interacted with their surroundings and with each other. He envisioned a future where your phone knew where you were and could provide contextually relevant information and connections. This vision was correct. Location services did become central to mobile computing. But timing mattered enormously, and Loopt was early. To fund Loopt, Sam applied to Y Combinator's first batch in summer 2005. Y Combinator was a brand new experiment in startup funding created by Paul Graham, Jessica Livingston, Trevor Blackwell, and Robert Morris. The concept was revolutionary for its time. Instead of the traditional venture capital model where firms invested millions of dollars in exchange for large ownership stakes, Y Combinator would invest small amounts of money, around $10,000 to $20,000, in exchange for small equity stakes, around 6 to 7%. In return, startups would receive 3 months of intensive mentorship and guidance. Y Combinator's model was designed to support founders at the earliest, riskiest stage of company building. Traditional VCs wanted to see traction, revenue, and proof of concept before investing. But that meant founders had to bootstrap through the hardest phase with no resources or support. Y Combinator filled that gap. The program provided just enough capital for founders to live frugally and focus full-time on their startup for a few months. More importantly, it provided access to experienced entrepreneurs who could offer advice, make introductions, and help avoid common mistakes. Paul Graham was the intellectual force behind Y Combinator. He was a programmer, essayist, an entrepreneur who had co-founded ViaWeb, an early e-commerce software company, and sold it to Yahoo for $49 million in 1998. After selling ViaWeb, Paul had spent several years writing essays about startups, programming, and technology. His essays were widely read in the tech community and influenced how people thought about entrepreneurship. Paul believed that the startup funding system was broken and that much more could be achieved by helping more young founders get started. Sam Altman was accepted into Y Combinator's first batch along with 7 other startups. This was the summer of 2005, and Y Combinator was completely unproven. No one knew if the model would work. The startups met in Paul Graham's house in Cambridge, Massachusetts for weekly dinners where they would present their progress and receive feedback. This intimate setting created strong bonds between founders and mentors. It also created a culture of openness and mutual support among the startups themselves. Being in Y Combinator's first batch meant Sam was there at the creation of what would become the most influential startup accelerator in the world. He witnessed firsthand how Paul Graham thought about startups and founder potential. Paul emphasized moving fast, talking to users constantly, and iterating quickly based on feedback. He taught founders to focus relentlessly on building something people wanted, the core philosophy that would become Y Combinator's motto. Paul also stressed the importance of ambitious thinking. He encouraged founders to pursue ideas that seemed impossibly difficult because those were often the most valuable. Through Y Combinator, Sam was exposed to a concentration of entrepreneurial energy and talent unlike anything else. The other founders in his batch were equally ambitious and driven. They shared ideas, offered support, and created a competitive camaraderie that pushed everyone to work harder. This experience taught Sam the power of community in entrepreneurship. Starting a company could be lonely and difficult, but having peers going through the same struggles made it more manageable. This lesson would later influence how Sam thought about Y Combinator when he became its president. After completing Y Combinator, Loopt raised venture capital funding and began building its product and team. Sam threw himself into the work of being a CEO. He learned how to recruit engineers, negotiate with mobile carriers, pitch investors, and manage a growing organization. These were skills you couldn't learn in a classroom. They required hands-on experience, making mistakes, and learning from them. Sam was getting an intensive education in company building while still in his early 20s. Loopt faced significant challenges from the start. The mobile ecosystem in 2005 was fragmented and difficult to build for. There was no iPhone yet. No app store. Developers had to work with mobile carriers directly to get their apps distributed. Each phone model required custom development. Getting users to download and use location-sharing apps required overcoming privacy concerns and technical hurdles. The infrastructure for location-based services was immature. Everything was harder than it needed to be. Despite these obstacles, Loopt made progress. They launched their product and began acquiring users. They raised multiple rounds of venture funding, eventually totaling over $30 million from prominent investors. They built partnerships with mobile carriers. They grew their team to over 30 employees. By external measures, Loopt was a success. But internally, Sam knew something was off. User growth wasn't exponential. People used the app but didn't find it essential. The product was good but not great, useful but not indispensable. Sam was learning a painful lesson that many entrepreneurs learn. Not all markets are equal. A good team with good execution in a mediocre market will produce mediocre results. Location-based social networking in the pre-iPhone era was simply too early. The timing wasn't right. The technology infrastructure wasn't mature enough. User behavior hadn't evolved to the point where people were comfortable constantly sharing their location. Loopt was pushing against market forces that couldn't be overcome through sheer effort and intelligence. This experience shaped Sam's thinking about market timing profoundly. He came to believe that when to start a company was often as important as what company you started. Being too early was almost as bad as being too late. The best opportunities existed when underlying technology had matured enough to enable new solutions, but before the market became crowded with competitors. Finding that window required understanding technological trends and anticipating how user behavior would change as technology improved. For 7 years, from 2005 to 2012, Sam ran Loopt. During that time, the mobile landscape transformed completely. Apple launched the iPhone in 2007, revolutionizing what was possible on mobile devices. The App Store launched in 2008, creating a thriving ecosystem for mobile developers. Android emerged as a major platform. Smartphones went from niche devices to mainstream consumer products. Location services became built into operating systems. The vision Sam had in 2005 became reality, but Loopt hadn't captured it. By 2012, it was clear that Loopt wasn't going to become a breakout success. The company had never achieved the explosive growth that characterized truly successful startups. Competition had intensified. Larger companies with more resources were building similar features. The window of opportunity had closed. Sam faced a decision about Loopt's future. He could continue trying to find a path to success, raise more funding, and push forward. Or he could accept that Loopt had reached its ceiling and look for an exit. In March 2012, Green Dot Corporation, a prepaid debit card company, acquired Loopt for $43.4 million. For Sam personally, this was a successful outcome. He'd started a company, raised substantial funding, built a real product with real users, and achieved a meaningful exit. Most startups fail completely. Loopt had survived for 7 years and returned money to its investors. But Sam knew that by Silicon Valley standards, this was not a home run. It was a respectable single or double, not the grand slam he'd hoped for. The Loopt experience taught Sam crucial lessons that would shape the rest of his career. First, market timing matters enormously. Being early means you bear the cost of educating the market and solving infrastructure problems without being able to capture the value. Second, product-market fit is essential. A good team can't overcome lack of genuine user demand. Third, the difference between good and great in startups is exponential, not linear. Moderate success and spectacular success look similar early on but diverge dramatically over time. Perhaps most importantly, Sam learned what it felt like to work extremely hard on something for years and have it not fully succeed. This gave him empathy for other founders facing similar struggles. It made him less naive about how difficult building companies really is. Many people who've never started companies think success is about having a good idea and executing well. Founders who've been through it understand that countless factors outside your control influence outcomes. Luck, timing, and external circumstances matter more than people want to admit. After Loopt's acquisition, Sam was 27 years old with money in the bank and freedom to choose what to do next. Many entrepreneurs in his position would start another company immediately, applying lessons learned to a new venture. Sam considered this option. He had ideas for startups and could easily have raised funding based on his experience. But he'd also observed something during his years running Loopt. He'd noticed that his happiest moments weren't when Loopt hit milestones. They were when he was helping other founders think through their challenges. Throughout Loopt's journey, Sam had stayed close to the Y Combinator community. He attended events, mentored newer founders, and maintained relationships with Paul Graham and others involved in the program. He'd watched Y Combinator grow from that first batch of 8 startups to become the most prestigious startup accelerator in the world. By 2012, Y Combinator had funded hundreds of companies including Dropbox, Airbnb, Stripe, and many others that had become hugely valuable. The model Paul Graham pioneered had proven spectacularly successful. Sam began to think about what would maximize his impact on the world. He could start another company and try again to build something big. If he succeeded, he might create $1 billion company and affect millions of users. But there was another path. He could help hundreds of founders build their companies. If he could increase the success rate of young startups even slightly, the aggregate impact would be enormous. One person starting one company was limited by their own capabilities and time. but someone helping hundreds of founders leverage their efforts across all those startups. This thinking led Sam to join Y Combinator as a part-time partner in 2011, while still running Loopt. After Loopt's acquisition in 2012, he became more involved. By early 2014, Paul Graham was thinking about succession planning. Y Combinator had grown substantially. The program now funded over 100 companies per year across 2 batches. Managing this scale required operational excellence and leadership skills beyond just identifying promising founders. Paul, who was in his late 40s, wanted to transition away from day-to-day operations and focus on other interests. Paul Graham chose Sam Altman to become Y Combinator's new president. The decision was somewhat surprising. Sam was only 28 years old. He hadn't achieved the kind of spectacular entrepreneurial success that might seem to qualify someone for the role. Loopt's acquisition was respectable but not extraordinary. Some people questioned whether Sam had the experience and credibility to lead Y Combinator. But Paul saw something in Sam that others might have missed. Paul recognized qualities in Sam that went beyond his resume. Sam was exceptionally thoughtful about startups and technology trends. He had a gift for identifying talented founders early before they'd proven themselves. He was good at giving advice that was specific and actionable rather than generic. He had strong opinions loosely held, willing to advocate for positions while remaining open to being wrong. He was ambitious and wanted Y Combinator to achieve its full potential. Most importantly, Paul trusted Sam's judgment about people and startups. In February 2014, Sam Altman became president of Y Combinator. He was responsible for running the accelerator program, making funding decisions, mentoring founders, and setting strategic direction. This was an enormous responsibility. Y Combinator's reputation and success attracted thousands of applications from aspiring founders worldwide. The quality of YC's selection process and the value it provided to startups determined its continued success. If Sam failed, Y Combinator could decline from its position as the top accelerator to just another program among many. Sam approached the role with characteristic ambition. He didn't want to simply maintain what Paul Graham had built. He wanted to expand Y Combinator's impact dramatically. Under Paul, YC funded around 120 startups per year. Sam believed they could fund many more without sacrificing quality. He also wanted to expand beyond just early-stage funding into later-stage investing, research, and other initiatives. His vision was for Y Combinator to become a comprehensive platform supporting startups throughout their entire life cycle. One of Sam's first major decisions was to significantly increase the number of companies YC funded. He implemented changes to the selection process and program structure that allowed them to fund over twice as many startups as before. This was controversial. Critics argued that doubling cohort size would dilute the quality of companies and the attention each received. They feared Y Combinator would lose the intimate, high-touch mentorship culture that had made it special. Sam disagreed. He believed the bottleneck wasn't Y Combinator's capacity to support founders but rather the number of good founders applying. Sam's bet was that there were far more talented founders than Y Combinator was reaching. By expanding capacity, they could fund more of these overlooked founders without lowering standards. The key was improving how they identified promising founders, not just filtering from existing applicants. Sam wanted to actively recruit exceptional people to start companies, not just passively evaluate applications. This proactive approach to founder identification became a hallmark of his leadership. Under Sam's leadership, Y Combinator made other significant changes. They launched YC Continuity, a growth stage fund that could invest in YC companies that had matured beyond the seed stage. This addressed a gap in YC's model. After graduating from the 3-month program, successful startups would raise money from other VCs and Y Combinator's involvement would diminish. YC Continuity allowed them to maintain relationships and continue supporting their best companies. Sam also launched YC Research, a non-profit research lab focused on important but potentially unprofitable areas. The initial areas of focus included basic income research and efforts to develop new mechanisms for funding scientific research. This reflected Sam's interest in using Y Combinator's resources and reputation to work on important problems beyond just funding startups. He believed Y Combinator had accumulated enough success and credibility to take on more ambitious projects with longer time horizons and less certain commercial outcomes. During Sam's tenure, Y Combinator's influence grew substantially. More people applied to the program than ever before. The companies funded became more valuable. YC portfolio companies were collectively worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Success stories like Airbnb, Dropbox, Stripe, Instacart, DoorDash, and many others validated Y Combinator's model. Sam became one of the most prominent voices in Silicon Valley, regularly writing and speaking about startups, technology, and the future. Sam's thinking on AI and its implications began to crystallize during this period. He'd been interested in artificial intelligence since his teenage years but had focused his career on startups and internet companies. Now, in the mid-2010s, AI was advancing rapidly. Deep learning techniques were achieving breakthrough results in image recognition, speech recognition, and other domains. Companies like DeepMind and OpenAI were pushing the boundaries of what AI could do. Sam started paying much closer attention. He became convinced that AI would be the most important technology of the coming decades. Not just important, but transformative in ways that would reshape society, the economy, and the human experience. This wasn't a distant future concern. Sam believed the timeline to artificial general intelligence, AI systems that could match or exceed human performance across all cognitive tasks, was shorter than most people thought. Perhaps it would happen in 20 or 30 years, maybe sooner. And the implications were staggering. Sam had several concerns about AI development. First, he worried that AGI would be developed by a company focused primarily on profit maximization. Such a company might rush development, cut corners on safety, or use AGI in ways that benefited shareholders but harmed humanity. The incentives of competitive capitalism didn't align with ensuring AGI benefited everyone. Second, he worried about the concentration of power. Whoever controlled AGI would have unprecedented influence. If AGI capabilities were controlled by a single entity, government or corporation, the risk of misuse was high. Third, Sam worried about the pace of development relative to society's ability to adapt. Even if AGI was developed safely and controlled by benevolent actors, the economic and social disruption would be enormous. Millions of jobs would be automated. The distribution of wealth and power would shift dramatically. Political institutions designed for the pre-AI era would struggle to govern effectively. The risk wasn't just that AI would be actively harmful, but that society wouldn't adapt fast enough to manage the transition. These concerns led Sam to think deeply about AI governance and safety. He read everything he could find on the topic. He talked to researchers working on AI alignment and safety. He thought about mechanisms for ensuring AGI development benefited humanity broadly rather than just a narrow set of stakeholders. This intellectual journey was preparing him for what would become his most significant role yet, though he didn't know it at the time. In late 2015, Sam was approached by Elon Musk and several others about a new AI research organization they were planning to create. The project was called OpenAI. The founding group included Elon, Sam, Greg Brockman, Ilya Sutskever, John Schulman, and Wojciech Zaremba, among others. Their vision was ambitious and idealistic. They wanted to create a research lab focused on developing safe artificial general intelligence and ensuring its benefits were distributed broadly to humanity. OpenAI's founding premise was that AI would become incredibly powerful and that concentration of that power was dangerous. The major AI labs at the time were controlled by large tech companies like Google, Facebook, and Microsoft, or funded by governments. OpenAI wanted to create an alternative, an independent research organization that could pursue AGI development without the constraints of corporate profit motives or government control. The plan was to structure OpenAI as a non-profit and fund it through philanthropic contributions. The founding group committed over $1 billion to launch OpenAI. Elon Musk pledged to contribute heavily. Other wealthy individuals and organizations also committed funding. The idea was that by removing profit pressure, OpenAI could focus purely on beneficial AGI development without having to worry about quarterly results or shareholder returns. They could publish their research openly, contributing to the broader scientific community rather than hoarding knowledge for competitive advantage. This openness would help ensure AI benefits were widely shared. Sam Altman joined as co-chair of OpenAI alongside Elon Musk. This was initially a part-time role. Sam was still president of Y Combinator and planned to continue in that position. OpenAI would be something he worked on alongside his YC responsibilities. The early team at OpenAI was exceptional. They recruited some of the world's top AI researchers, offering them the opportunity to work on important problems without commercial pressure. The organization's mission to ensure AGI benefited all of humanity resonated with researchers who worried about the technology's trajectory. OpenAI's first few years focused on pure research. They published papers on reinforcement learning, robotics, and natural language processing. They released open-source tools and models for the research community. They competed in AI competitions and benchmarks, demonstrating the capabilities of their systems. The organization operated much like an academic research lab but with significantly more funding and computational resources than typical universities could provide. This combination of academic culture with industry-level resources was powerful. However, OpenAI faced a fundamental challenge. Training cutting-edge AI models required enormous amounts of computational power, which was extremely expensive. As models grew larger and more sophisticated, the costs increased exponentially. OpenAI was burning through hundreds of millions of dollars per year. The initial billion-dollar funding commitment wasn't going to last forever. Meanwhile, competitors like Google's DeepMind also had massive resources and were making rapid progress. OpenAI needed a sustainable funding model. By 2018, it became clear that OpenAI's original structure as a pure non-profit wasn't viable long-term. The computational costs of training state-of-the-art models were too high to fund purely through philanthropy. At the same time, the organization's research was producing potentially valuable intellectual property. There was tension between OpenAI's mission of openness and the practical need to generate revenue to sustain operations. The leadership team had to figure out a new structure that balanced these competing needs. In early 2019, OpenAI announced a major restructuring. They created a hybrid model called a capped profit company. OpenAI LP would be a for-profit entity limited to returning a maximum of 100 times any investment to its investors. Any returns beyond that cap would go to the original non-profit OpenAI entity. This structure was designed to allow OpenAI to raise capital from investors and employees through equity while maintaining a cap on returns that kept profit-seeking motivations in check. The cap profit structure was unusual and somewhat controversial. Critics argued it contradicted OpenAI's founding principles of being a non-profit focused solely on beneficial AGI development. How could you claim to put humanity's interests first while also trying to generate returns for investors? Others defended the change as a pragmatic necessity. OpenAI couldn't achieve its mission without massive computational resources, and those resources required capital that philanthropy alone couldn't provide. The capped profit model was a compromise that allowed fundraising while maintaining mission alignment through the return cap. Microsoft became OpenAI's major strategic partner and investor. In 2019, Microsoft invested $1 billion in OpenAI. The partnership gave OpenAI access to Microsoft's Azure cloud computing platform, solving the computational resources problem. In return, Microsoft received exclusive rights to license OpenAI's technology for commercial applications. This partnership was mutually beneficial but also complex. Microsoft was a for-profit company with its own strategic interests. Managing the partnership to ensure OpenAI's mission wasn't compromised required careful governance. During this period of transition, Sam Altman was becoming more involved in OpenAI's operations. In March 2019, he stepped down as president of Y Combinator to focus full-time on OpenAI. This was a significant decision. Y Combinator had been a huge part of Sam's identity and career for years. Leaving meant trusting others to continue building what he'd helped create. But Sam believed OpenAI's mission was more important than anything else he could work on. If AGI really was coming in the next few decades, helping ensure its development went well was the highest leverage use of his time. Sam became CEO of OpenAI in 2019. His role was to manage the organization's operations, fundraising, strategic partnerships, and communication with the outside world. Meanwhile, the research team led by Chief Scientist Ilya Sutskever continued pushing forward on technical work. This division of labor was crucial. Sam's strengths were in strategy, fundraising, and leadership, not cutting-edge AI research. By focusing on what he was good at and empowering world-class researchers to do what they were good at, OpenAI could operate effectively. Under Sam's leadership, OpenAI shifted somewhat from pure research toward building products. The organization began developing AI systems that could be commercialized, generating revenue to fund further research. This was a controversial change for some who preferred OpenAI's earlier focus on publishing open research. But Sam believed that to truly understand AI's capabilities and risks, you needed to deploy systems at scale and see how they performed in the real world. Academic papers were important but insufficient. In June 2020, OpenAI released GPT-3, a large language model with 175 billion parameters. GPT-3 was a breakthrough. It could generate human-like text across a wide variety of tasks with minimal training examples. Developers could interact with it through an API, feeding it prompts and receiving sophisticated responses. The capabilities were startling. GPT-3 could write essays, answer questions, compose poetry, generate code, translate languages, and much more. It was far beyond what most people expected from AI systems. GPT-3's release generated enormous attention. Developers around the world experimented with the model, creating applications for everything from customer service chatbots to creative writing tools. The media covered GPT-3 extensively, with headlines marveling at its capabilities. AI researchers debated what GPT-3's performance meant for understanding intelligence and how close we were to AGI. OpenAI had successfully demonstrated that large language models trained on massive datasets could exhibit surprisingly general capabilities. However, GPT-3 was far from perfect. It could produce factually incorrect information confidently. It sometimes generated biased or offensive content reflecting biases in its training data. It couldn't reason about the real world in reliable ways. It had no memory across conversations. Despite these limitations, GPT-3 represented a significant step forward. It suggested that scaling up model size and training data might be a viable path toward more capable AI systems. OpenAI began offering GPT-3 access through a commercial API, charging developers for usage. This generated OpenAI's first significant revenue stream. Companies integrated GPT-3 into their products for tasks like content generation, customer support, and data analysis. The API model worked well. It allowed OpenAI to maintain control over the underlying model while enabling widespread experimentation and innovation by others. Revenue from the API helped fund further research and development. Sam's strategic vision for OpenAI was becoming clearer. He believed the path to AGI required enormous computational resources and capital investment. OpenAI needed to generate substantial revenue to fund the hundreds of millions or billions of dollars required to train ever larger models. At the same time, OpenAI needed to maintain its mission focus on beneficial AGI development. The way to balance these imperatives was to build commercially valuable AI products that generated revenue while advancing the technical capabilities needed for AGI. In 2022, OpenAI was working on its next-generation language model, GPT-4. The goal was to make a model significantly more capable than GPT-3 across reasoning, factual accuracy, and other dimensions. They were also developing ChatGPT, a conversational interface that would make AI accessible to regular people, not just developers using an API. The team believed ChatGPT could demonstrate AI's potential to the broader public and generate mainstream interest. ChatGPT launched on November 30, 2022. It was offered as a free web application anyone could access. Users could type questions or requests and receive detailed, conversational responses. The simplicity of the interface and the quality of the responses created instant viral growth. Within a week, ChatGPT had over 1 million users. Within 2 months, It had 100 million users, making it the fastest-growing consumer application in history. The cultural moment had arrived. ChatGPT's explosive adoption exceeded OpenAI's expectations. Suddenly, everyone was talking about AI. Regular people who'd never thought much about artificial intelligence were using ChatGPT for work, school, and personal projects. Teachers worried about students using it to cheat. Workers explored using it to automate parts of their jobs. Writers experimented with it for brainstorming and drafting. The capabilities and limitations of AI became a mainstream conversation topic rather than something only researchers and tech enthusiasts discussed. The success of ChatGPT validated Sam's strategic approach. By building a product that was useful and accessible, OpenAI demonstrated AI's potential to transform how people work and think. The attention and user feedback helped OpenAI understand how people wanted to interact with AI and what capabilities mattered most. The viral growth also put competitive pressure on other AI companies, spurring faster development across the industry. Google, Meta, and others announced plans to release their own conversational AI products. In March 2023, OpenAI released GPT-4, their most capable model yet. GPT-4 demonstrated substantial improvements over GPT-3 across reasoning, factual knowledge, and task performance. It could pass the bar exam, score highly on standardized tests, and engage in more sophisticated conversations. Perhaps most significantly, GPT-4 was multimodal, able to process images as well as text. This opened new applications in areas like visual understanding, document analysis, and creative work. GPT-4's release reinforced the narrative that AI capabilities were advancing rapidly. Each new model was meaningfully better than its predecessor. The improvements weren't just incremental. They represented qualitative leaps in what was possible. This raised profound questions. If models continued improving at this pace, how long until they matched or exceeded human expert performance across all domains? What would society look like when AI could do most cognitive work humans currently do? How should we prepare for that transition? Sam Altman became the public face of OpenAI's mission to develop beneficial AGI. He gave interviews and speeches explaining OpenAI's approach and the challenges ahead. He testified before Congress about AI regulation. He met with world leaders to discuss AI governance. He wrote essays about the future implications of AI for work, the economy, and society. Sam's communication emphasized both AI's potential benefits and the serious risks that needed to be managed carefully. Sam's message was nuanced but consistent. He argued that AGI would be the most important technology humans ever created, with potential to solve previously intractable problems in medicine, science, education, and other domains. But he also emphasized that AGI posed existential risks if developed carelessly. He advocated for technical AI safety research, robust testing before deployment, and international cooperation on AI governance. He believed the private sector, governments, and civil society needed to work together to ensure AGI benefited humanity. This position generated both support and criticism. Some praised Sam for taking AI safety seriously and advocating for responsible development. Others accused him of hypocrisy, arguing that OpenAI's rapid deployment of increasingly capable models contradicted claims about caution. Critics pointed out that warning about risks while simultaneously racing to build more powerful systems seemed contradictory. Sam responded that not developing AGI wasn't an option since others would build it regardless. The question was who built it and whether they prioritized safety. In November 2023, Sam Altman was suddenly fired as CEO of OpenAI by the company's board of directors. The announcement shocked the tech industry. OpenAI was at the peak of its success and influence. Sam had been the public face of the company and architect of its commercial strategy. The board statement said they'd lost confidence in Sam's ability to lead OpenAI but provided few specifics. Rumors swirled about conflicts between Sam and board members over the pace of AI development and commercialization. The firing triggered an immediate crisis at OpenAI. Employees were outraged. Over 700 of OpenAI's roughly 770 employees signed a letter threatening to resign unless Sam was reinstated. Key executives resigned in solidarity. Microsoft, OpenAI's main investor and partner, expressed strong support for Sam. The situation was chaotic. Without employee support and with major stakeholders opposed, the board's position became untenable. After intense negotiations involving Microsoft, OpenAI employees, and various stakeholders, Sam Altman was reinstated as CEO just 5 days after being fired. The board that had fired him was replaced with new members, including Brett Taylor as chairman. The episode was a remarkable demonstration of Sam's support within OpenAI and the tech industry more broadly. It also revealed tensions within OpenAI's governance structure between different visions for how aggressively to pursue AGI development. The crisis and resolution reshaped OpenAI's governance. The new board included more members with technology and business backgrounds rather than primarily AI safety researchers. This suggested OpenAI would continue its commercial trajectory under Sam's leadership. Some safety-focused employees and board members had worried Sam was moving too fast and prioritizing growth over caution. Their concerns hadn't prevailed. OpenAI would remain on a path of rapid capability development alongside commercialization. Today, Sam Altman leads OpenAI as it pursues artificial general intelligence. The company is valued at over $80 billion. ChatGPT has hundreds of millions of users. OpenAI's models are integrated into Microsoft's products and used by enterprises worldwide. The organization continues releasing increasingly capable AI systems. Sam has become one of the most influential people in technology, shaping not just OpenAI's direction but the broader conversation about AI's future impact on society. The story of Sam Altman's journey from a 19-year-old Stanford dropout to the CEO of OpenAI reveals several important patterns. First, the importance of timing in technology. Sam's early experience with Loopt taught him that being too early is nearly as bad as being too late. His decision to focus on AI came at the moment when technical progress was accelerating rapidly. Second, the power of networks and relationships. Sam's involvement with Y Combinator gave him connections and credibility that opened doors later. Third, the value of taking on increasing responsibility over time. Sam could have stayed comfortable as a successful startup founder or Y Combinator president. Instead, he consistently chose harder challenges with potentially greater impact. Each role prepared him for the next. Running Loopt taught him about building companies. Leading Y Combinator taught him about evaluating founders and technology trends. Both experiences prepared him to lead OpenAI through its complex challenges. Fourth, the importance of long-term thinking. Sam's focus on AI wasn't driven by short-term commercial opportunity. He genuinely believes AGI is coming and that how it's developed will determine humanity's future. This conviction has guided his decisions even when they involved personal costs or risks. Finally, the necessity of pragmatism alongside idealism. OpenAI's transformation from pure non-profit to capped profit company reflected Sam's willingness to adapt structures to achieve objectives when the original plan proved unworkable. Sam's story also reveals tensions and questions without clear answers. Is OpenAI's approach to AGI development the right one? Is it possible to develop AGI safely while moving as quickly as OpenAI is moving? Can a for-profit entity truly prioritize humanity's interests over competitive and financial pressures? Is concentration of AI development in a few organizations like OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic better or worse than broader distribution across many entities? These questions don't have obvious answers. The relationship between Sam's role leading OpenAI and broader questions about AI governance is complex. On one hand, Sam advocates publicly for AI safety research, robust testing, and regulatory frameworks. He seems genuinely concerned about existential risks from misaligned AGI. On the other hand, OpenAI under his leadership has commercialized AI aggressively and released increasingly powerful models rapidly. Critics argue there's a gap between Sam's rhetoric about caution and OpenAI's actions. Supporters counter that rapid development combined with careful safety work is the best strategy. Sam's leadership style combines ambitious vision with practical execution. He thinks in terms of decades and civilizational impact while also focusing intensely on immediate operational details. He's comfortable with uncertainty and comfortable making high-stakes decisions without complete information. He builds strong teams and empowers talented people to operate independently. He communicates effectively with diverse audiences from technical researchers to policymakers to the general public. These qualities have served him well across different roles. Some aspects of Sam's personality and approach generate controversy. He is extremely confident in his views and comfortable taking positions that contradict conventional wisdom. This confidence can seem like arrogance to critics. He is willing to take significant risks in pursuit of ambitious goals. This risk tolerance has enabled achievements but also created situations where things could have gone very wrong. He is pragmatic and willing to compromise ideals when necessary to achieve objectives. This pragmatism can look like inconsistency or expediency. The firing and reinstatement episode in November 2023 revealed both Sam's strengths and potential vulnerabilities. The massive employee and stakeholder support that forced his reinstatement showed the loyalty he'd built and the trust people placed in his leadership. But the fact that the board felt compelled to fire him suggested governance concerns about concentrated power and strategic direction. The resolution strengthened Sam's position but didn't resolve underlying tensions about how to balance safety and progress. Looking ahead, Sam faces extraordinary challenges leading OpenAI. The technical challenge of developing AGI safely is daunting. Current AI systems lack reliable alignment with human values and intentions. Scaling up model capabilities without solving alignment could create systems that are powerful but unpredictable or misaligned. OpenAI and other AI labs are working on technical solutions, but the problems are extremely difficult. No one knows if current approaches will be sufficient or if fundamentally new breakthroughs are required. The competitive landscape is intensifying. Google, Meta, Anthropic, and others are investing billions in AI development. China has made AI a strategic priority. The race dynamic creates pressure to move quickly even when caution might be wiser. OpenAI's lead is not guaranteed. Sam must navigate keeping OpenAI at the technical frontier while maintaining safety standards and ethical commitments. This requires making difficult trade-offs between speed and caution, openness and security, commercial success and mission purity. The societal implications of increasingly capable AI will become more pressing in the coming years. Job displacement from automation will accelerate. Economic inequality could worsen if AI capabilities are concentrated among a few entities. Misinformation and manipulation using AI-generated content will become harder to detect and combat. Autonomous AI systems making important decisions will raise accountability questions. Sam and OpenAI will be at the center of debates about how to manage these challenges. Sam advocates for universal basic income as one policy response to AI-driven job displacement. He believes that as AI automates more work, society will need new mechanisms for distributing wealth and ensuring people can maintain decent living standards without traditional employment. This perspective reflects Sam's broader interest in how society adapts to transformative technological change. But advocating for such policies is different from implementing them. Whether societies actually adopt adequate social policies is uncertain. The question of AI governance remains largely unsolved. Should there be international treaties limiting certain types of AI development? Should governments create regulatory agencies overseeing AI deployment? Should AI companies self-regulate through industry standards? How do we balance innovation with safety? How do we ensure benefits are distributed broadly rather than captured by narrow interests? These questions don't have consensus answers. Sam's role puts him in position to influence how they're resolved, but he doesn't control outcomes. Sam's legacy will ultimately depend on how the AGI story unfolds over the coming decades. If OpenAI successfully develops AGI that dramatically improves human welfare while avoiding catastrophic risks, Sam will be remembered as one of the most important figures in technological history. If AGI development goes badly, whether through accidents, misuse, or misalignment, judgments will be harsher. The stakes could not be higher. Sam has positioned himself to shape events that could determine the long-term future of humanity. Beyond his role at OpenAI, Sam has become an important voice shaping how society thinks about AI and the future. His essays and public communications reach millions of people. political leaders consult him on AI policy. His perspectives influence how other technologists, investors, and entrepreneurs think about where to focus their efforts. This platform carries responsibility. What Sam says matters not just for OpenAI but for how civilization navigates the transition to an AI-enabled world. Sam's personal life has remained relatively private despite his public prominence. He is gay and has spoken about his sexuality and the importance of LGBT rights. He maintains friendships with other tech leaders and investors. He is known for being accessible and responsive despite his responsibilities. Those who work with him describe someone intensely focused on OpenAI's mission who can discuss technical AI research details one moment and strategic business questions the next. He reportedly works extremely long hours and expects similar dedication from his team. The contrast between Sam's early career with Loopt and his current role at OpenAI is striking. Loopt was a mobile app that eventually achieved a modest exit. OpenAI is pursuing artificial general intelligence, potentially the most significant technological development in human history. Both required entrepreneurial drive, vision, and execution. But the scale of potential impact differs by many orders of magnitude. Sam's trajectory shows how someone can start with relatively conventional startup ambitions and end up working on civilizational scale challenges. What made Sam the right person to lead OpenAI through its critical phase? Several factors stand out. His experience running Y Combinator gave him perspective on how to evaluate and support ambitious technological projects. His entrepreneurial background meant he understood both the opportunities and challenges of building something from scratch. His network in Silicon Valley provided access to capital, talent, and partnerships. His communication skills allowed him to articulate OpenAI's mission to diverse audiences. And his genuine belief in AGI's importance gave him conviction to make difficult decisions. But Sam is not without critics. Some AI safety researchers worry he prioritizes capability development over safety. Some employees who left OpenAI have suggested the culture became too commercial and less mission-focused. Some observers question whether any individual should have as much influence over AGI development as Sam does. These criticisms raise important questions about power, accountability, and whether OpenAI's governance structure adequately represents humanity's interests. The companies Sam has built and institutions he's led share common themes. Y Combinator under Sam became more ambitious, funding more companies and launching new initiatives. OpenAI under Sam has become more commercial and product-focused. The pattern is toward scale and impact rather than purity of model. Sam seems to believe that to achieve important goals, you need to build large, successful organizations with resources to match the scale of problems you're addressing. This pragmatic approach has achieved results but involves compromises. Sam's intellectual influences shaped his thinking. Paul Graham's essays on startups emphasized moving fast, focusing on what users want, and thinking ambitiously. Peter Thiel's ideas about technological progress and the importance of breakthrough innovations resonated with Sam. Books on AI safety by Nick Bostrom and others convinced him existential risk from advanced AI was serious. Economic thinkers who wrote about technological unemployment and basic income informed his views on AI's societal impact. Sam synthesized these influences into his own perspective. The speed of AI progress since ChatGPT's release has been remarkable. In just over a year, conversational AI went from a niche research topic to a mainstream technology used by hundreds of millions of people. This rapid adoption validated Sam's belief that AI was ready for broad deployment and that making it accessible would accelerate progress. But the speed also created challenges around safety, ethics, and societal adaptation. There wasn't time for society to carefully consider implications before the technology was widely available. OpenAI's relationship with Microsoft has been crucial to its success but also creates tensions. Microsoft's investment provided capital and computing resources OpenAI needed. The partnership gives OpenAI access to Microsoft's customer relationships and enterprise distribution channels. But Microsoft is a for-profit company with its own strategic interests in competing with Google and other tech giants. Ensuring the partnership serves OpenAI's mission rather than purely commercial goals requires careful management. Sam must navigate this complex relationship. The question of whether OpenAI should remain a single organization or whether AGI development should be distributed across multiple competing entities remains contested. Concentration in one or a few organizations might allow better coordination on safety but creates risks from failure or misuse. Distribution across many organizations might make catastrophic failure less likely but could trigger dangerous race dynamics. Sam has argued that OpenAI having somewhat of a lead might actually be safer than multiple organizations in a tight race, since it allows more measured development. But this view is not universally accepted. Sam's age is notable. He is still in his 30s. If AGI development takes another decade or two, he'll still be young when the transition happens. This generational perspective may influence his thinking. Unlike older leaders who might not live to see AGI's full impact, Sam will likely experience the world he's helping create. This temporal alignment between his work and his lifetime arguably increases his incentive to get it right. He will personally face the consequences of today's decisions. The resources being invested in AI development are unprecedented. Companies are spending tens of billions of dollars on computing infrastructure, research, and talent. Governments are funding AI initiatives and building supercomputers. The largest tech companies view AI as existentially important to their competitive positions. This massive investment is accelerating progress but also intensifying competitive pressures. Sam must lead OpenAI in an environment where everyone knows AGI is valuable and multiple well-funded entities are racing toward it. One of Sam's key insights is that AI capabilities will improve in surprising ways as models scale. Many capabilities emerge that weren't explicitly trained for. This suggests that continued scaling might lead to even more unexpected capabilities, potentially including aspects of general intelligence. But relying on scaling requires enormous computational resources, which requires capital, which requires commercialization. This logic drives OpenAI's hybrid model of funding research through commercial products while working toward AGI. The ethical questions around AI development are profound. Who decides what values AI systems should embody? How do we ensure AI benefits humanity broadly rather than concentrating benefits among those who control the technology? What rights, if any, should advanced AI systems have? How do we handle disagreements about what constitutes beneficial AI? These questions combine technical challenges with philosophical and political dimensions. Sam's role requires engaging with all of them simultaneously. Sam has suggested that AI might enable unprecedented abundance if developed well. If AI can automate most work and help solve problems like energy, materials science, and disease, humanity could enter an era of material plenty. In that scenario, questions of distribution and meaning become paramount. How do people find purpose when traditional work no longer structures their lives? How do we ensure resources are shared equitably? Sam thinks these questions are important and will shape society's future, but solving them isn't purely technical. The narrative of Sam's career is not finished. The most important chapters may not have been written yet. Whether OpenAI succeeds in developing beneficial AGI, how that technology reshapes society, and Sam's role in steering those outcomes will determine his ultimate historical significance. Right now, in late 2024, we are in the middle of the story. The trajectory is set but the conclusion remains uncertain. Sam is aware of this and has spoken about feeling the weight of responsibility. For aspiring entrepreneurs and technologists, Sam's journey offers several lessons. First, work on important problems even if they seem too ambitious. Sam could have stayed in his comfort zone but chose to tackle AGI despite its difficulty. Second, be willing to adapt as you learn. Sam's thinking evolved from location-based apps to startup investing to AI development based on where he saw opportunity for impact. Third, build relationships and reputation over time. Sam's network from Y Combinator proved crucial for OpenAI. Fourth, communicate your vision effectively to diverse audiences. Sam's ability to explain AI to policymakers, investors, researchers, and the public has been essential to OpenAI's success. Fifth, take responsibility commensurate with the stakes. Sam stepped into the CEO role at OpenAI knowing the weight of what he was taking on. Sixth, maintain conviction while remaining open to evidence. Sam has strong views but adjusts them when facts change. These patterns characterize effective leadership on important problems. Sam's story also illustrates the role of luck and timing in careers. He had talent and drive, but he also benefited from being in the right place at the right time. Y Combinator happened to launch when he needed it. Paul Graham happened to choose him as successor. AI progress happened to accelerate when he was positioned to lead OpenAI. None of this was guaranteed. Counterfactually, with slightly different circumstances, Sam might have remained a modestly successful entrepreneur rather than one of the most influential people in technology. The question of whether Sam is the right person to lead humanity's approach to AGI is ultimately unanswerable with certainty. No one has led humanity through an AGI transition before. There's no proven model for doing it well. Sam has relevant experience, intelligence, and resources. But whether that's sufficient for a challenge of this magnitude remains to be seen. The honest answer is that we won't know until after the fact, when we can look back and assess outcomes. What we can say is that Sam has positioned himself to play a central role in how AGI develops. Through a combination of strategic choices, effective execution, and some luck, he leads the organization currently at the forefront of AGI development. That position carries enormous influence and responsibility. How Sam uses that influence over the coming years will shape not just OpenAI's trajectory but possibly the future of human civilization. Few people in history have been in positions of comparable consequence. The story of Sam Altman from Y Combinator to OpenAI is ultimately a story about ambition, technology, and the future. It's about someone who recognized that AI would be transformative and positioned himself to influence its development. It's about the challenge of building institutions that can pursue long-term goals while surviving short-term pressures. It's about the tension between moving fast and being careful when the stakes are existentially high. And it's about the very human story of someone trying to do something important with their limited time on Earth. As we look ahead, the next chapters of Sam's story and OpenAI's story will unfold in real time. We are all participants in this moment of technological transformation. The decisions made by Sam and others leading AI development will affect everyone. Whether that fills you with optimism or concern depends on your assessment of whether these leaders will make wise choices under pressure. What's certain is that the story is not finished and the most important parts may still be ahead.